Hello, everybody.
That's perfect.
Hopefully that silence worked. We'll cut right there, the silence. Anyway, what's up, guys? You're not going to know context about this at all, but welcome back to Usually Disappointed, the show where 3 to 4 people talk about the video games. I'm Ethan.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Ben.
So, guys, we're back into the full swing of things. If you listened to the very last episode, you realized we took that episode as entirely a catch-up one because a lot of developments happened within a month. We as our comeback episode, we're like, okay, we're just gonna take because I'm pretty sure we had a lot of stuff to talk about in terms of games we played. I certainly did, but we made that its own separate episode, so we didn't have a 3-hour long whatever here. So this is back on track, back on the recommendations. We're back into the swing of things. Yes, we'll talk about Super Metroid later this episode, and I hope you love it. Anyway, who played the video games this past week? You know what? I'm gonna ask Ben, because Ben played a new game.
Oh yeah, boy did I. So, over the weekend, I actually went to go get the COVID vaccine, second dose. And so, not knowing whether or not I would react that day or the day after, I just decided to take the entire weekend off just to myself. And then just this last weekend also happened to be the release of Subnautica Below Zero. And if you've listened to earlier episodes, you know that I'm a huge fan of the original Subnautica. It was the game that I'm scared to death of the ocean, and it took me a while to get into that game, but once I finally did, I just fell in love with it. It's awesome. Now that they've and then they opened up Below Zero to early access in 2017, I think, or 2016, somewhere around there. And it's just been in constant early access for that whole time. I bought the game way back in 2017, and I've just been waiting for it to go out of early access ever since then. And so this last weekend, it finally exited early access, and I got my grubby little paws on it, and opened it up, and I played for the entire weekend pretty much. So I have, I think, almost 30 hours in the game after just a couple days, and yeah, I've been having the time of my life. It's fantastic. It's everything that I hoped the sequel would be. It's pretty much it's a new location, got new creatures. It's actually got a different composer, and the soundtrack is just as good, if not better, in some parts. They had a whole bunch of quality of life improvements. So yeah, I mean, it was a fantastic experience, and I'm probably gonna keep playing. I'm gonna go back in and do some more base building, because that is addictive, and probably go for 100%. I only have one more achievement left because they don't have any achievements in the game.
Oh wow!
There's only 13 achievements, and pretty much most of them are triggered by quest progress stuff. So, it's not that crazy. And also, there's yeah. Go ahead. You're saying something?
I was just gonna ask you a question. But if you're still going, then
Yeah, don't let us.
Oh yeah. What was the question?
I was just gonna ask, has the general gameplay loop of Subnautica really switched around at all with this new release? Is there any has the formula kind of been shaken up at all, or is it kind of largely the same survival sort of game that it was, on the original release?
It's pretty much still the same. The big difference is that there were several quality of life improvements, so that stuff isn't as tedious. But I mean, I don't think it would be Subnautica if they shook it up too much far away from the original. Grab resources, fabricate stuff, survive, interact with new creatures, that type of thing. There are a couple
Can you
of
give
different.
An example?
Let me see. Oh yeah, for example, you can pin recipes now. So before, when you had to make something, you would have to go into your PDA and into the blueprint section and then scroll to find the recipe. and then pretty much remember, and then keep going back if you forgot like this specific item. But with the pin recipes function, you can just pin it to your screen, so you can just have it like at the top right of your screen like the whole time while you're exploring and making stuff and finding resources and stuff. So it's really nice, and it'll show you like how many of the required items you have, and then how many of said item you can make. So that's really nice when you're like trying to do some like mass fabrication stuff. So in the last game, they also had 3 separate vehicles. The Seamoth, which is like a small, like agile submarine. The Prawn Suit, which is pretty much just like an underwater mech, with various functions like drilling and grappling and stuff like that. And then they had the Cyclops, which is pretty much just a giant submarine that functioned as like a mobile base. So they pretty much got rid of the Seamoth and the Cyclops, and they combined them into one thing called the Sea Truck, which is basically the front of it operates as essentially the Seamoth. It's, small, it's nimble, it's agile, it's fast. But then you can turn it into a Cyclops essentially by fabricating more modules that have specific purposes, like a sleeper one, so you can sleep overnight, past the nighttime. A fabricator module, so you can bring your fabricator with you and make stuff on the go, so you don't have to go back to your base every time. A storage module, so you can have more storage for hauling stuff around. Aquarium, so you can just have creatures and scan them and stuff like that, so it's easier. And so on and so forth. You can even have like a thing that holds your prawn suit on the back. They still have the prawn suit. So, and then you can like detach the front of it whenever you need to go into a small space. So it's really nice, really convenient. I really love that about the Sea Truck. But I mean, and then they've got like the map is a little easier to navigate in some respects. I was able to get through this game with only using the guide like I think 3 times total. So it was a lot easier to go through, and it was not as vague. So
and do you prefer that over the more vague way that the first game was?
I think so, because whereas, like, for example, take another game, Dark Souls. Dark Souls is vague, but as long as you look at item descriptions and stuff like that and pay attention to what the characters are saying, you can get a good idea what you're supposed to do. However, in Subnautica, the original one, like, very little was actually told to you through, like, databank entries and blueprints and stuff like that and voice logs. I mean, there's a lot to be told. I mean, there's a lot there. But the big thing is like you never really knew exactly where to go. And some places would remain hidden unless you looked them up on a map or looked up a video on how to find said area. But with Below Zero, most voice logs tell you like an approximation of where to go, and certain other characters will tell you like where certain things are located. And they won't give you just a straight up waypoint marker a lot of times, but because they want to encourage exploration and stuff, but they will give you a good idea, so you're still able to find it. The only thing I think was there was one location that I had a hard time finding, but that was only because I just completely missed like a big ass opening in one side of the rock when I went there several times, so it was my fault. But overall though, I mean, it plays a lot better, looks nicer. The creatures there's more creatures. I mean, it's less tedious while still being like an open world, like survival game. So I think it's a fantastic successor, and the story's pretty good too. So
So yeah, it sounds like a sequel that is mainly just trying to iron out the kinks of the original game. So it feels like a more polished version of the first game in a sense.
Yes, definitely. Because the first game, as much as I love it, felt broken in a lot of parts and empty in others. Simply because, I mean, it was an independent team that were, making this giant underwater survival game from the ground up. And like large underwater environments are a lot of times pretty difficult to do in games. And so making an entire game just underwater is a pretty big feat in and of itself. So yeah,
especially making a fun one.
Exactly, yeah, because oftentimes, there's the whole like thing of water levels being like, not very fun in video games. And so the idea at a surface level, when you take that like idea and be like, what about a game where the whole thing is a water level, a lot of people would just be like, oh no, please no. But they made it in such a way that like movement and like interactivity and survival, all that stuff is just really fun. Plus like the whole base building aspect, like you can make like a space that feels like your own and you can customize it quite a bit. And I don't know, it's really fun. It's extremely addicting to me.
Here's a question. If they were to make Subnautica 3, which they probably will, because it seems like this game's doing quite well. If they were to do that, would you want them to go the same sort of trajectory where it's like very like minimal actual like gameplay changes and just more refining and like a new location? Or since it's the third game, would you want them to like mix it up quite a bit? Because it's like I played this sort of formula twice and I'd like something new.
I don't know, because I mean, you've got 2 games where, you know, you're exploring on the same ocean planet and encountering similar creatures, and having a similar gameplay loop and a similar story with like, you know, pretty similar characters and themes and stuff. A third one, I think I think if you did a third one, it wouldn't have to either expand on the already existing story, or it would have to completely like take a different route. Because I mean, the big thing was on the first game. So 4546B, for anyone who's not aware, is a largely like devoid of life ocean planet except for certain areas. Like in the area that you play in the first game, it's a 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer volcanic crater that's been inactive for long enough for life to have evolved and grown in, around, and on top of it. Everywhere else on the planet is a ecological dead zone, essentially, where Leviathan class organisms survive on microorganisms and stuff like that. And then there's the Arctic section, which is essentially a similar thing. It's a result of like volcanic activity. And then, you know, that's just it's a polar ice cap. If they did something else, it would probably have to either take place on a different planet or involve some other like open world, like, exploration, angle maybe. Although the stuff that they've built up and the way that they've made Unity work for their style of game works honestly best for underwater stuff. So the only other thing I could see them doing is maybe just like a slightly different, underwater environment in a different part of 4546B that we don't know about. Or maybe go back to one of the older ones.
Would you say the first game is like more tropical themed, or is it just kind of like an ocean?
I mean, it's an ocean essentially. I mean, I wouldn't say it's.
I guess you could go
tropical,
like,
but
I don't know, maybe go like coral reef next game. I don't know. Kind of with
well,
water.
The thing is both games.
Yeah.
Both games have a coral reef section because the environments are broken up into common oceanic environments. Because coral reefs are more towards the shallow area, and then we start to get deeper. You start encountering hydrothermal vents and like crevices and volcanic activity and that kind of stuff.
So yeah, the first game is just kind of like typical ocean, and the second game is cold ocean. Like, where do you go from there?
Pretty much. That's what I'm saying. There's not really much else you could go, because those are 2 of people's like biggest fears. If you want to like bank on the oceanic fear factor, you started off good by just having the ocean, and then you turned it up a notch by having the Arctic Ocean, which is scarier in and of itself, simply because the idea of just going underwater and seeing these just massive, like things of ice looming above you, and then just like this blue nothingness below is absolutely terrifying. And then fill that up with sea monsters, and you got a great horror, unintentional horror game.
Maybe with the third game they can just go full on horror game, like it's like a super dark ocean and it's just like monsters everywhere. Or something.
Maybe they could do something involving the dead zone, but I don't see how that could really work, because it's a survival game. So if you're trying to do anything in the dead zone where all these giant Leviathan creatures are, where's the resources going to come from? How are you going to, eat? What's the point of going deeper? That kind of thing. Because the entire draw of going deeper in both games. Ooh. But the entire draw of like both games was that. Yeah, the entire draw of both games was that like you go deeper to unravel the mystery of like these alien life forms that inhabited the planet like thousands of years ago and have since gone dormant because of some mysterious reason. So that's like the draw of both games. So yeah, that's why you go deeper in those. And also, to get better resources to escape the planet later on.
Yeah. It's nice to hear you talk about them. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
I like hearing you talk, yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. But yeah, I mean, so that's my experience with Subnautica Below Zero. I don't know what they would do with the third game. I honestly don't know, but as it stands, I'm glad that they delivered a solid sequel, and I will probably continue playing it for hours on end, but in shorter spans, because over the weekend I played it in like 8-hour increments pretty much. So yeah.
Oh, awesome. You've been quiet. You've been kind of quiet, Ethan. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up?
No, I only really had that one question. Ben was pretty comprehensive and sort of kind of breaking down the experience for me, and I've sampled the original Subnautica before, so I played enough of it to kind of get an idea on what it was. Just not really for me. Those games just aren't really for me. So I guess just kind of hearing Ben talk about it kind of confirmed for me that, yeah, it sounds really good. Those who like the original probably going to really like this one and everything. Sounds great, but still have zero interest in playing it.
Yeah, I could definitely see where the disinterest comes in, because it is a very tedious game. So...
Yeah, but hey, people get more of what they want and get that improved and everything. Like, hell yeah. And, what I've played of Subnautica, I recognize it's a good game. I just know it's not for me is all. So
exactly, yeah.
Have that happen all the time, like good games all the time. That's just, yeah, not for me. But is there anything else that you've been playing around this past week, Ben?
I mean, I played the title game in question. I mean, we were talking about we each played Metroid, and I played that, but I'm going to save that for when we get around to that. So,
well, yeah, of course.
Spoilers.
So Andrew,
yeah,
tell me what you played over the past while.
I really wanted to use this segue. It's kind of late now, but I'm just going to use it anyways. I probably wouldn't play Subnautica because I like more streamlined survival horror games like Resident Evil, and that's what I played.
Hey, yeah. What's Resident Evil's?
Yeah, I finished Resident Evil 2 remake this past week. Both stories. I did both Leon and Claire.
What did you? Yeah. Okay. Yes, I was about to ask. What was your A and B? Was it Leon A, Claire B?
Yeah. I felt very at home.
That's what
Leon,
I did first time as well. Yeah, that's what I did the very first time as well. Apparently, canonically speaking, for the remake, I guess it's supposed to be Claire B, Leon A is canon, technically, but...
I was surprised that their stories... I don't know if I was surprised, but their stories, they don't necessarily intersect so much as just, like, you kind of take the place of the other character, and then there's just kind of minor story deviations, which is fine. Like, that's not a problem. Yeah, the main difference is just who like your main supporting character is. With Leon it's Ada, and with Claire it's Sherry, and that's the main difference between the two, and like how the weapons are quite different.
Doors are different. Certain doors that you can only enter on a certain playthrough.
Yeah, final boss is different. There's quite a few differences. It's there's enough differences where I didn't feel like I was doing the same things again. Like, for a good example is when I was playing as Leon, like I almost never dealt with the liquor enemies. Like I was just like, I don't think I'll ever survive if I. Maybe I was just being a coward, but yeah, I mostly just ran away from them or snuck past them. But with Claire, though, she's got the. I'm sorry?
I was going to say, when you say liquor enemies, I just imagine a whole bunch of people just coming after you trying to sell you, liquor.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh-huh.
The drunks.
I don't know, that
game.
just popped into my head. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that anecdote, Ben.
Beerville. I don't know.
That was nothing.
Nice try.
What was I saying? Something about the liquors. Oh yeah, with Claire though, since she has that grenade launcher, you can actually dispose of them pretty easily. So yeah, I like that like subtle shift there, where it's like I felt like I actually had like a viable means to defeat those enemies, and that was interesting to me. That like that shook up the gameplay. So I had a lot of fun with both the stories. I would personally disagree though that it's better than Resident Evil 4. And not necessarily because that's just the first one I played,
okay.
but well, here's the big difference between the two for me is that with Resident Evil 4, there are so many like individual, like almost like scenes or scenarios that are just stand out in my mind as like that was awesome, and like I can name like 15 of those from that game. With Resident Evil 2. I would say the same thing, just not quite as many. Like it's just I guess.
I get what you're saying. I guess how I am interpreting it is that Resident Evil 4 is very set piece driven. That it is consistently moving you from one thing to the next. That it's kind of going and you're getting dramatic kind of changes of scenery and even some gameplay style as you keep going through, while Resident Evil 2 is more along the lines of traditional Resident Evil in that it is hyper focused on a singular locale, and it is just a trek around a small area and kind of just kind of exploring a contained area, like every nook and cranny of that, while Resident Evil 4 is just like, roller coaster ride through. They're very different things in a lot of ways, and hey, I love Resident Evil 4. It's my second favorite Resident Evil, so it's like, it's a freaking masterpiece. But I think that's interesting that you have that perspective, that you like it more. I guess the way that I've kind of broken it down into dumb monkey language, does that kind of sound accurate, I guess, to how you feel?
Yeah, and I think the reason why I preferred that in 4 is because when it comes to experiencing like any form of art, for me, a lot of my appeal is like how memorable I find it. And there's just Resident Evil 4 is just a game that is super easily sticks in your mind, and I really value that in like any sort of video game. That's why I'm not a big fan of like grind-a-thon type games, because there's a lot of that you just kind of forget. And but with like the set piece oriented Resident Evil 4, like a lot of it just sticks in my mind, and I will probably not forget it anytime soon. And if like a remake does come out for Resident Evil 4, and I imagine if I were to play that, it would be like, oh, this part. Whereas if I were to play a remake of like, I don't know, like if I play like the remake of like Skyrim again, like after like having not played it for like 5 years or something, it almost feel like a new game, because I probably would have like forgotten quite a bit of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it does. I've played both Resident Evil 2 remake and the original, so I don't know. Interesting perspective. Not necessarily one I'd say I don't have it, but interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, no, that's what makes like discussing stuff like this interesting. Yeah, that's just how we differ.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And then I'm over here having not played Resi at all.
You should.
Yeah, I'm sure you
really
should.
You
really like it.
I mean, I probably would, honestly, because I mean, I do have them on my wish list. So I just haven't bought them yet because I'm trying to play through stuff that I've had for a while.
Yeah, no rush.
you need to work through a backlog before you. That's what I'm currently doing right now, but I'm still buying games on top of it all. Please help me.
But I do want to give Resident Evil 2 more credit than I've given, though. Like, this is probably the most like tense I've been in a game in a really long time. Yeah, it's. It's there was a lot of times when I was playing as Leon where I like ran out of ammunition in like a very like natural way, and I'm like, oh man, I gotta like run past enemies basically. Like the part with the dogs in the basement.
Oh,
I was
man.
like out of ammo, so I gotta like run past them and they're like
Yeah.
jumping on me. Like that was like legit scary.
Yeah, that part freaked the shit out of me too, man.
Yeah.
Back in my first playthrough.
Yeah, Claire was quite a bit easier because I was a bit more used to it.
Yeah.
And also, like, it seems like some of the more tricky segments from Leon is kind of replaced with, like, liquor enemies. Like, that seemed to be a trend. Like, the dogs aren't there. Instead it's lickers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very much it. The B scenario is intentionally meant, and this is kind of any Resident Evil B scenario, because there's, you know, Resident Evil 2 has B scenarios, Resident Evil 1 has B scenarios, and I think that's it, actually. Wow. Well, yeah, no. Man, geez, weird. Anyway, a B scenario like that, in those first two games were very much meant to be a far more streamlined playthrough. Just kind of give you those story bits with the other character and everything, and kind of, you know, shunt you along at a pretty fast pace to wrap up the game as soon as possible. So, I don't know why I said one has an A and B scenario, because it doesn't. I don't know. But yeah, okay. 2 has it. I'd like to see it come back, because it is certainly an interesting mechanic. But yeah, no, even in the very original Resident Evil 2, which I've done ABs of both Claire and Leon in the remake, but I've only done a Leon A, Claire B of the original game. But yeah, I can even attest, even in the original, that yeah, that second playthrough is meant to like really get you going. Fun fact though, Mr. X is not in scenario A in the original Resident Evil 2. He does not show up for the entirety of that. It's just Birkin.
Mr. X would be horrifying in like a fixed camera angle game. Like you wouldn't know where he is.
You know, I would totally agree with you, except for the fact that he goes down like a bitch in the original RE2. Because like I started, it's interesting because if you ever get the chance, I would highly recommend you play the original Resident Evil 2, because it is very different.
Yeah,
like this remake it's not a one-to-one remake. There's a lot of similarities, so there's a lot of differences, and intriguing ones too. But in the B scenario, Mr. X just shows up, like, immediately. Like, boom, he's there. Like, you progress, like, 2 rooms, and you do, like, a quick, not even a puzzle. You just, like, take one item from a hallway, and you put it somewhere else, and then you go back down that hallway again, then Mr. X is there. And it's like, what? Excuse me? And, yeah, I mean, he's pretty rough at first, but you find Claire's grenade launcher like so fast, and that grenade launcher just absolutely destroys Mr. X anytime he shows up. So it's not nearly as threatening as he is in the remake, which is interesting. And I think that's one reason why I think I like the remake more than the original. One reason why is because Mr. X actually kind of feels like he was a bit threatening. Now I can kind of exploit his AI a bit more, but you know,
he's simultaneously the scariest and the funniest character at the same time.
yeah, very much.
Yeah, it's great. There was one time when I came up with this.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Ben. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna ask, how do these games, for example, compare to, like, I guess the closest survival horror experiences that I've played have been Outlast. So how do these compare to like the Outlast games?
You can defend yourself. That's one thing. There's a lot of inventory management. Outlast I felt was very much a roller coaster kind of horror game where it's just like, ooh, one spooky encounter to another, like Resident Evil. For the most part, it far much takes its time on things. Yeah. Even in Resident Evil 4, which, you know, I'm talking about, like, you know, breakneck pace and everything, but it still knows when to, like, kind of dial things back and kind of slow it down. And a lot of times it does slow down. Resident Evil 4 is a, you know, decently length game. Mm-hmm. I think it's one of the longest Resident Evil games before you hit, like, 5 and 6. But anyway, Outlast is just kind of more about, like, ooh, you're running around the spooky hallways, ooh, you hide in the locker and whatever, but Resident Evil is like, oh, you're doing a lot more you're doing puzzles, have to memorize where enemies are, you have very limited resources, you got to manage that, limited save systems, so on and so forth. So, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain it without you really playing it, but the best way to honestly explain it for most people is just by saying it's a traditional survival horror experience.
Yeah, kind of invented
it. Is well, it didn't really invent it. It kind of refined it.
It popularized it.
Alone in the Dark, and was kind of like the first one of its ilk. But Resident Evil very much like, okay, yeah, this is what it's. It made it so that it didn't play at like 15 frames per second. And
what about Silent Hill though? Was that around?
It didn't look nearly as chunky. Ish. I think Resident Evil predates Silent Hill. Yes, it does. Silent Hill was like 97. I should know because hint hint, I'm going to be talking about the first Silent Hill soon. When did that come out though?
I think you're right. Like 96, 97.
99. 99 is when it came out. Yeah, so the first Resident Evil predates that because the first Resident Evil was like 90.
Resident Evil 2 was 98.
96. Yeah, Resi 2 was 98. The first one came out in 96. So it's been a series that's been going for 96. So 25 years now, right?
Yeah, very old game.
Yeah, it's 25th anniversary of Resident Evil this year.
That's awesome.
And we just got a game, a new one, and a good one too. So yeah, baby.
Yeah, Resident Evil, I've really enjoyed both of them. I've also started 3, the 3 remake. I only played it for about an hour the other night. And yeah, it's going to be a lot different for me. This is going to be the first Resident Evil game I've played that you don't play as Leon. So that's already a big difference.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I hope you love Jill. I love Jill.
She's
so
very
much.
sexy.
She's such a great character. She's a great character. And yeah, they very much like in the 3 remake, everyone was like, hey, and then everyone saw how Carlos was looking. We're like, hey.
Yeah.
Like,
very sexy protagonist.
Dang. Yeah, they both are like, oh, what's up? Hey, Carlos. What's up?
Yeah, at the very beginning of the game.
Chin rub.
What's with Resident Evil, man? It's been horny as hell or at least we all have been. I don't, probably more the latter than anything else. But man, they Capcom. Thank you.
Yeah, at the beginning of the game, it's actually kind of first person, so you don't actually get to see Jill. And I was like this is lame. Like, show me Jill.
Yeah. It's very unique in that because I was confused. I played 3 make day one. I got it on PC the day it came out, and yeah, it was really weird at first. Like, wow, what's this first person nonsense? Like didn't we see like third person gameplay? Didn't I play the demo? And yeah, of course, it was just after that intro sequence. One thing that's really interesting, I'll let you know, Andrew. I would say after you've played Resident Evil 2 remake, it's kind of up in the air and like whether or not you should really bother playing the original. I think it might be worth it, but I would kind of understand like it's not necessary, honestly.
The first one?
They all aren't. But I'm talking about the original Resident Evil 2 because after you played the remake, but I would say it's definitely worth playing the original Resident Evil 3 because wow, they make a lot of changes up to the point that there's like cut levels in the remake. I still really like the remake. I think the remake is great. It's nowhere near my favorite Resident Evil, but it's still up there. It's ranked higher than, some other expected games in the series for me, but man, it's a tad shame that there's not more to it, because I personally feel that the original Resident Evil 3 is one of my favorite games. It's really good. It's one of the best Resident Evils, in my opinion. So if you have the means of getting your hands on it, there was a GameCube port, and Dolphin exists, so I'm just gonna tell you that now. It's definitely worth giving it a shot.
Yeah,
So
I might at some point.
But yeah, definitely let me know what you think of 3-Make, because I'm curious what a perspective would be on the game of someone who has not played the original Resident Evil 3, because I had that perspective going into it, and all the reviews were essentially people just comparing it to the original. So I'm like, okay, but like I'm kind of curious what a fresh perspective is on it. So yeah, keep us updated on that. I'm very intrigued to see how you feel about it.
I can give you my initial response to it.
Definitely.
It's clearly going to be a lot different, and I find that very like engaging just right off the bat, because I kind of like how each Resident Evil game I've played so far like feels like dramatically different than the other ones, while still retaining a lot of like similar aspects. Like you got the green herb in every game. I think that's hilarious.
Yeah, green herb.
An injury, nothing a little green herb can't fix. But yeah, so far I'm mostly intrigued by like, first of all, like the knife, like it doesn't break, like in the 2 remake, and you can basically dodge roll now, which is like dramatically different. Like all you could do, one of my biggest critiques actually with the 2 remake is that there's a lot of times where I just feel like I can't dodge certain attacks because your character is just kind of tanky, which is fine. Like it makes the game scarier, but there was a couple times where I'm like, it'd be nice if there was a better way I could dodge this. Like, it kind of feels like a crapshoot at some points in the game, but that's fine. It's not a huge deal. So I like how it adds some sort of dodging mechanic in 3. It might make the game less scary, but I don't know. I'm willing to, like, sacrifice some scares for, like, a bit more ease of play, I guess.
Understandable.
Accessibility, yeah.
Yeah, I get where you're...
Yeah.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from in terms of the control, because widening that up kind of it devalues the horror aspect of it, but it really ups that game feel, baby.
There's also this seems to be a trend with the game that a lot more of it takes place outside than 2
Yes.
remake, which is interesting because a big part of the 2 remake is that there's zombies kind of like walking towards you slowly in a narrow corridor, which makes it a lot easier to pop them, like with the gun. It's by no means easy. I miss shots all the time, but so like this new dichotomy of like it's a lot more open of an area. There was a lot of times where I was getting swarmed by zombies. I'm like, this is way harder. Like, even with the dodging, it's like it's just so much more easy to get swarmed, and it's and zombies don't necessarily walk to you in like single file anymore. So that's quite a bit different, and I find that very engaging. So yeah. So far I'm like, I'm really digging that this is a lot different. Who knows if that feeling will persist? I might start to like get a little annoyed with it. Who knows? I'm very curious though. Like it's a very like just playing it for an hour the other night. I'm like, this will be a very interesting experience. And yeah, and I'm really digging that I'm getting this sort of feeling from the Resident Evil franchises. Like each one has its own like different like merits and different modes of gameplay, and I find that really engaging.
Yeah, that, and speaking as someone who's played through at least the entire canonical series and even some of the non-canon entries, that's very true. I think the 2 Resident Evil games that have the biggest similarities between the 2 of them would be like the original RE1 and original RE2, and then like RE4 and RE5 feel a tad similar, but other than that, they're all kind of going for like really dramatically different things, like gameplay wise, and it's real cool to kind of see that, where a new Resident Evil game isn't it's guaranteed to have some spooky bits or something like that in it, but it's bound to be interesting.
Yeah, and that's what I really dig about it. It's very interesting, and I haven't like been interested in a game franchise in quite a while, so that's very nice.
It takes a lot of work to keep a series alive for as long as this, and not make it too derivative of itself. Like make it at least somewhat continuously fresh as time goes on. People argue that they slumped a little bit between like Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6. Like, I get it, but I'm a bit of an apologist for those games to some extent.
Yeah, you have Resident Evil 6 rated pretty high on your little ranking.
Yeah, I do. I can send my Resident Evil ranked list to those who haven't seen it yet in this chat, which would just be Ben, I think. Because you've seen my Resident Evil ranked list, Andrew?
Yeah, of course. I was like, I am super
curious.
I
think I posted it somewhere. But yeah, anyway, yeah, I'm happy to see you get into Resident Evil. It's a series that I love. And I'm glad that I can share the love, because, man, it's great. And I've seen more and more people get into Resident Evil, with Resident Evil 8 being as popular as it is. I mean, man, everyone has gotten into Resident Evil, which sucks for me in that I really want to get, like, the PlayStation versions of Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, because, man, those are expensive right now. But it is awesome that everybody's talking about Resident Evil and more people are getting into something that I love, and I don't know, I like that a lot. That makes me very happy.
If I was to get into Resident Evil, where would you... Yeah, which one would you recommend I start with?
Maybe the 2 remake.
Resident Evil...
Maybe.
Resident Evil 1 Remake. That's where I always will point to go first. RE1 Remake. You can play it anywhere, essentially. Like, literally anywhere.
Can I get it on Steam?
You can... Yeah, and it runs at 60 FPS. So it's stupid that's the only version that runs at 60 FPS for whatever stupid reason, but...
What's it called?
Yeah. Resident Evil Remake.
Or the remake.
Or just... It's Remake.
Remake. Remake.
Remake.
Do you get it, Ben?
And we call... We call Resident Evil 3 Remake 3 Make.
And 2 Make.
Is it
I can't
the
wait
one?
for the 4 Make.
I can't find it.
Hold on. Let me... I'm on Steam. Resident Evil.
I search up Resident Evil.
Not the first Resident Evil that pops up.
Resident Evil Remake, and a few entries down the list is these game series called Loot Apocalypse.
Oh, great. On Steam, it's just known as Resident Evil, so, just pull it up that way. And the store release was in 2015. Capcom,
oh, it's just,
of course.
Just Resident Evil?
It's $20. Yeah, it's $20 normally, but you can get it on sale for, pretty good price, so... Capcom usually puts their Resident Evil games on sale somewhat frequently, and they put them on pretty good deals too, so yeah, definitely check it out.
Similar to games you've played, Doom and Spyro, the collection.
It is not like Doom and Spyro.
It's quite a bit different.
I'll tell you now. If you're really thinking that they're going to be similar, I hate to burst your bubble.
It's somewhere in the middle.
I'm not expecting them to be similar. I love how it's just the two different ends of the spectrum: Doom and Spyro.
They're kind of
it's either like ultra violent, angry man in hell, versus happy little dragon in Dragonland.
That's torching its victims.
Comparing that to a slow, methodical mansion crawl sort of experience. Okay.
Steam store. Thank you for that.
I've got some games to talk about. I've played 2. I have not finished either of them, but I've played 2. We've already alluded what the first one is, so I'll just get that out of the way. I've been playing the original Silent Hill. Original hardware as well, playing an official copy, physical copy, and the reason why I make a big deal out of that is because, good luck getting your hands on Silent Hill for the PlayStation 1, complete in box for basically anything under $200 right now.
Oh, wow.
So, Yeah, this copy is a friend of mine's, Sage. Thank you very much. I've thanked her countless times already for letting me borrow her Resident Evil games as I work through them. I'm currently just borrowing RE1, Silent Hill 1, and man, it is freaky as shit, man. It's an original PlayStation game, but man, is it freaky. I'm still really early into it. I'm in the elementary school. And it's, really dark and everything and spooky and stuff. But man, for a old game and everything, I think it's kind of funny how old graphics for me in a way, they kind of like, in terms of a horror atmosphere, like they were really scary when they came out. And then it's like, oh, it's not really scary anymore. Like, look at this dated technology. And now it's kind of scary again because it's like dated and weird and freaky and whatever. Like, I'm up there now.
I can see that. Yeah,
the chunky polygons and everything with the pitch black and the fog and everything and the weird looking monsters. Yeah, man, it's creepy. It's real creepy, but it's also like super corny at the same time. The voice acting is something else. But people don't talk very much in the game, which I guess really helps amplify that horror atmosphere. And the soundtrack is, man, I've heard what the soundtracks get in later games, and I'm like, oh man, just the sound design alone is just gonna get me flying, man. But yeah, Silent Hill 1, what I've played so far is real good, and I'll update you further on it as I continue to play it.
Cool.
Sick. I've always been interested in those games, so
yeah.
It's just they've always seemed a little bit.
I guess I could kind of briefly bring up a comparison between that and Resident Evil. They're both tank control, survival horror games. Both have combat. Silent Hill is more on, well, I was gonna say more on atmosphere, but Silent Hill very much is too. I mean, Silent Hill gives you a larger area to kind of run around in, and everything, and but Resident Evil is far more claustrophobic in most places. Silent Hill kind of switches it up between the two more often, where it's like, ooh, you're really like out in the open, you can kind of avoid danger, but then there's also like you're pinned up in a hallway with weird freaky abstract monster children things, like you need to shoot them or you're gonna die. But yeah, no, it's interesting. That's all I can really say for now. I guess the big thing is that Silent Hill's horror is far more on the abstract and the psychological, while Resident Evil is far more into the monster zombie horror, which is still very effective. It's still great, and it still spooks me out in a lot of places, but Silent Hill goes for a different style overall. So think of similar gameplay mechanics, but with a different overall atmosphere and tone to kind of carry the game through.
That's very cool. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've always been interested in. Yeah, I've always been interested in Silent Hill because it's just the atmosphere always seemed like, I don't know, in terms of like other horror things of that time that were coming out, like in terms of like movies or whatever. It just seemed like it was more on like the weird and like truly unnerving side of things, other than, just like slasher horror or whatever.
Yeah, that's the impression that I've usually gotten from it, and so far I'd certainly agree. I'm really excited to finish this game and go to Silent Hill 2 and 3.
Yeah.
People exclaim that those are some of the greatest video games made of all time, man.
Especially 2.
Like, especially 2. 2 is really up there for people. And even though I already know the main spoiler for Silent Hill 2, shout out to Bobby, I hate you. You ruined that
I know
for
it
me.
too.
I'm still very I'm still very excited to play it, because I still can't have like the atmosphere and the gameplay and all of that ruined for me essentially. And great thing is, Sage coming in clutch once again. She also has Resident Evil 2, not Resident Evil, God, Silent Hill. She has Silent Hill 2 and 3 as well. So I'll be playing those ones as time goes on. But the other game that I've been playing over the past week is Demon's Souls for the PlayStation 5, baby.
Ooh.
Yeah. Sorry, grabbing my phone. I dropped it on the floor again.
Oh no, rip
Yeah,
phone.
whatever. It's already. Yeah. My back screen is already like cracked to shit. I'm gonna get it replaced soon. Anyway, Demon Souls, a real interesting experience. It is pretty fun. It controls. I'd probably say it might control better than the original and everything, and that's probably partially due to the upping in frame rate. I am playing this in the performance settings like a normal person probably should. But yeah, no. Other than that, yeah, just kind of taking my time with it. I had to get good all over again, and I was just kind of reminded on how much I just don't like that gameplay grind experience to get good in a Souls game. But you know, I'm finally there. My big thing is just that I'm really low on healing items right now, and similar to Bloodborne, they're consumables. They're not like Estus flasks where they'll reset at bonfires. You have to get them off of dead enemies. The problem is that Demon Souls, the drop rate for those healing items are yeah, not that great, to be completely honest. They're a bit obnoxious, but you know, we take what we can get. Yeah, good game though so far. I've only beat 2 bosses, so you know, I can't really go from there. I'm still very much in the early bits of the game. So with that all being said, let's talk about another game, a cool game, a great game recommended by Andrew on the, not the last episode, but the episode before that. Andrew, tell us about Super Metroid.
All right. Super Metroid is the 3rd Metroid game, which is one of Nintendo's longest-running franchises. One of the few that started on the NES that's still going to this day. Sort of. It's been quite a while since the last installment, but it's one of those Nintendo franchises that you get the games fairly rarely, but when they do come out, they're all really good. It's like probably maybe the only Nintendo franchise that's like that, where pretty much every entry is solid. It's been going for over 20 years, and we are still expecting more, even though the gap between them is really long. Anyways, Super Metroid for a lot of people is their favorite. It's by far the most popular Metroid game. It's usually considered to be one of the best Super Nintendo Entertainment System games, the SNES. It's certainly one of my favorites. I don't know if it's my favorite Metroid or Super Nintendo game, but it definitely ranks very highly, and it's always my go-to for people who want to get into Metroidvanias. It's one of the best. It kind of set the standard, this and Symphony of the Night. I think the formula has been improved in multiple ways with subsequent games that are based off of it. But it still offers a lot that is unique to it, and I think it's still very worth checking out to this day, even like a couple decades after its release. And I'm happy to hear that you guys both seem to enjoy it, which is awesome. So yeah, tell me like your general thoughts on it.
Who's gonna go first?
You go.
All right. So, full disclosure, I actually did not finish it, but I got pretty
Shocker.
far. Yeah, I knew that because I started kind of late. Because there was the whole overlap of like me finishing up school stuff and then Below Zero and then starting up on the podcast again and picking up a long sitting recommendation. But luckily, it's not like a terribly long game, and so I was able to get through like I think 80% of it in a single day, and most of it was done without a guide. But I did have to use a guide for certain things. For example, there was a certain boss that I had no idea how to beat until I looked at the guide. But yeah, overall, like I just automatically found myself enjoying it because it fell in the same rhythm as Hollow Knight and Ori and the Blind Forest. It's the ever expanding map that you gain abilities and you can access that parts that you couldn't access before. It's got good world building and environmental storytelling. Each ability, each new ability you get, it just expands the moveset that you're able to use to combat enemies and just do more movement and stuff like that. So I just found myself naturally falling into the flow just because I think when it comes down to it, one of my like default genres at this point is probably a Metroidvania. So yeah, like I found myself thoroughly enjoying it. I'm definitely going to go in and finish it up probably in the next week or two. So I'm in Meridia right now. So I've just gotten past, I think I've defeated like, I think half the bosses at this point, or maybe just over half.
So you haven't fought the boss of Meridia yet?
No, but I've fought Kraid already. I've fought Crocomire, I believe, and a handful of other like mini bosses, and the ghost dude, Fantoon, I think is his name. Yeah.
Cool. That means you're about 50 to 60%.
Yeah. So I'm. Yeah.
No, that's good, man. That's
so far
enough. Definitely where
it.
it's like, yeah, it's definitely enough where like you can, like you got a pretty good gist of the game. So, and you don't like mind if we spoil like some of the ending areas, do you?
Nah, because I mean the game's been out for decades at this point, so.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about the final area and stuff, but we won't spoil like everything. But we will definitely go into at least the like base level stuff. What about you, Ethan? What's your general thoughts?
I really liked it. I recognize that it's pretty dated and flawed in some places, which is honestly about to be expected of the first of its kind.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, it lays down a very solid foundation for evolving that style of games for time to come. And yeah, boy, that shit rocks.
Yeah, definitely the biggest problems with it are just sort of like kind of byproducts of its age, really. For instance, the wall jumping in the game is very difficult to pull off.
Yes, very difficult.
Yeah, Samus has to be cartwheeling in the air, and it's a tricky like maneuver where you have to like press backwards on the D-pad when you see like in like one frame of an animation, then press the button immediately afterwards, and you have to do that repeatedly. It's not very intuitive, and I think the developers knew that because they put in like a sort of tutorial for it, and you kind of get locked into that tutorial, and it can be a pain to get out of it. That's probably my straight up least favorite room in the game, is that little part. I don't know if you saw that, Ben.
I'm not sure. I just remember one of my gripes of the game was, I mean, it's old and it's the first of its kind, obviously, but it would have been nice if they at least like kind of told you the controls of certain things, because when I unlocked the morph ball, I had no idea how to use it. So I had to actually look that twice up from the get-go. Yeah, and it was down twice, and I was like, oh, okay, because I was going in the menu and like equipping and unequipping it, and then like pressing every single button on the controller, and then I looked it up and it was like, oh, down twice. Oh, okay.
What about that one room where you have to like run across the blocks that break? So, and all you have to do is press the run button, but a lot of people don't even know about the run button because the game doesn't really tell you.
Yeah, I had no idea.
It.
That was another thing I had to use the guide for, is I didn't know there was a run button.
Yeah. I played this game before and I still like forgot about that part. So I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah. I got to that room and I was like, how in the world? I think I spent like 20 minutes trying to get like past that, and I was like, I can do this. I can do this. I'm a Metroidvania man. I've 100% Hollow Knight, Ori in the Blind Forest. I can do the root of all of it. I can do the beginning, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So yeah, I had to resort to a guide.
First time. Yeah, very common first time player problem. Like everyone I've talked to that's played this game, they always get stuck in that room. It's very, yeah. Oh well, what can you do? I guess give it.
It's also because they have, yeah, they also have like the spikes on the top of the room.
Yeah.
So that
yeah, it's trying its best to teach you. But.
Yeah, it was easy to find because I just searched up Super Metroid Brinstar Spike Room, and it was like the first result that popped up.
So we know this is a problem.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. But yeah, that's really all my gripes. I don't have any problems with like the overall like I think the pixel art is like beautiful, especially for the 90s. The atmosphere and the music are both fantastic, and I pretty much like it's just a really fun gameplay loop. There's a reason why it keeps getting imitated with like indie games, and and like the boss fights are epic. So it's like those are the only real problems with the game. And if this game gets remade, which it might, because the first two games have gotten remade, those are just like super easy things you can tweak, you know. So. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this game's inevitable remake, I think.
If they remake it, do you think it'll be like 3D, or do you think it'll be like still in like the Metroidvania style?
Oh, no, it would be 2D. That would be really weird. I really hope they don't do that. There are 3D Metroid games, the Metroid Prime games. So it's like, if you're going to make a 3D Metroid game, like, just, like, you know, make it a Metroid Prime game, like, why would you remake a 2D game in that way? With Metroid 2, which was on the Game Boy, the original Game Boy, so it was in black and white. The remake from that game is also a 2D game that's on the 3DS. And yeah, I'd imagine that they would just kind of go with that art style if they were going to do a remake of Super Metroid. That's my guess.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, cool. So yeah, I'm kind of curious. The like your initial like you like get on the planet and you like and you go through kind of like underground phase, and there's like no music, right? And you get the morph ball. Like that whole sequence, I think that's kind of like the establisher of the tone of the game. I was wondering if that was like effective for you guys, because that's like the part where like the aliens, they're called space pirates. Like that's the first time they appear, and like the music starts like with the chanting and all that.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty sick.
Games that are this old tend to, they don't try to do things like establishing tone, really. It's just a video game, and there's not much you can do with it. This is probably the earliest example I've seen of like a game that, like in the first like 10 to 20 minutes, it does like it has a scene basically that is trying to establish its tone. It's kind of like a well-written essay. It's like in the first 10 minutes, it kind of summarizes like what the rest of the game will be like. It's like very eerie silence, and then you're like basically ambushed by these aliens, and that's when the music starts revving up, and it's like, okay, like I'm into this now. Like I get the gist of like what this game is going for, and I find that like impressive to me. So I'm curious of like, have you guys like had experiences like that with games where it's like in the first like 10 to 20 minutes, it kind of like establishes the tone of the game? Because I think that this is one of the first games that did that. Like, do you see that reflected in like other games that you've played?
100%,
Resident Evil 8 does a very good job at that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
100%. I mean, since we were talking about Subnautica earlier in this episode, I'm going to reference the first one again. because that's the first exposure that many people will have to the Subnautica franchise. Well, maybe now that Below Zero is out, maybe that'll be their first. But I mean, just the tone setting of crash landing, and then putting out the fire in the life pod, and then like you climb up the ladder for the first time, and you open the hatch, and then you just hear like this like big like rise and like this little like bass synth tone, and then you just see like your giant ship crashed in this endless like expanse of ocean where there's no land in sight. It's that's a good tone setter right there. It's like, all right, here you are, survive.
Yeah.
It's pretty bleak and hopeless at first, but then you go into the ocean, you see all this color and stuff like that, and it starts to look a little more possible to survive, and then so that's a good tone setter there, I think.
Mm-hmm. And you found that effective in Super Metroid as well?
Oh yeah, because like going in, because like the vibe I got going in from just Criteria in the first area before you get the morph ball was like this planet was like it's mysterious because you start off and it's all rainy, and you get off the ship and you go into like the very first like area, and it's quiet, and you keep going underground, and you're not sure, there's no enemies, and so you're just like, interesting, okay, it's very quiet. You can get a sense of something is up here, and then like you get the morph ball, and then all of a sudden all the aliens come in, you're like, oh, okay, here we go. So, it kind of puts you into the mood. It reminded me a lot of kind of the vibe of Alien.
Yeah. Actually, I want to get into that. Metroid takes a lot of inspiration from Alien. Yeah. I wonder did you notice any of the parallels, without even looking it up?
I just kind of felt like a lot of the art was just really Giger-esque in some places. I'm like, and just a lot of the tone and atmosphere and the setting. Of course, it's like, wow, like rummaging around alien ships and stuff like that. It's like this feels a little aliens-esque in some places. I'm like, this is kind of interesting. It's like I didn't think it's like a full-on ripoff, of course, but it's like a cool little homage.
It's like comparing Indiana Jones to Uncharted. Like Uncharted is the video game version of Indiana Jones. Metroid is the video game version of Alien.
Halo as well, though.
Idea. Yeah. This game's before
It's interesting,
Halo,
it's kind of interesting that I think the last two recommendations, was Halo the one before this? I think it might have been.
It was.
Yeah, I think you recommended
these two games, the last two games we've had in the recommendations in a row have been heavily inspired by Alien/Aliens.
We need to keep this going. Yeah, it very much wears its inspiration on its sleeve, which is fine. Like, for instance, Ridley is named after Ridley Scott, like the director of Alien. Yeah. Samus is a woman, just like Ripley. There's the plot of the second game is going to the Metroid homeworld and exterminating the Metroids and fighting the Metroid Queen, which is just like the second Alien movie, where they go to the Xenomorph homeworld and they kill the Alien Queen. Yep. A lot of direct inspiration, but that's fine. They very much do their own thing with it, and I think they pulled it off very successfully.
Yeah, I think they do. I think they do a fantastic job.
Yeah, this is one of the staunchest atmospheres in a game, from this time period that I've experienced. I like how the whole thing is just you really feel like you're just isolated on this alien world, which is crazy for such an old game.
For real, yeah.
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 Definitely.
Yeah, did you guys dig the alien designs, how the monsters and the bosses looked?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, overall it looked really freaking cool. It's a prime example of at the time the 16-bit graphical restraints being stretched to really interesting degrees and creating art that still looks fantastic to this very day. That's one thing I really like about this game and a lot of other games of that era, the 16-bit-ish era and a lot of those kind of like 2D style games is that visually speaking, they age like fine wine, and Super Metroid still looks really freaking awesome, especially in the enemy and the boss design.
Yeah, it's really grotesque. What'd you guys think of Kraid, the big green guy?
Oh, is that the like really big fat one?
Yeah, the first big
Who
boss.
shoots the thorns out of his tummy?
Yeah.
Yeah, like what the crap.
Yeah, that was pretty shocking.
Yeah, I was always interested in that design ever since I saw Kraid in the background of Brinstar Depth stage in Melee.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
he is in that. I forgot.
Yeah, so once I saw like that design while originally playing Melee, I was like, whoa, what is that guy? Is he a dragon? Whoa, that's crazy. And then like now I'm just seeing like the origin of where Kraid comes from. And I'm like, that's dope.
Yeah, by the way, you guys remember right before you fight Kraid, there's like a little mini version of him that you fight. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually how big he was in the original game. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's a boss in the very first Metroid game, and yeah, he's that small. He's about the same size as Samus. So they kind of like, it's almost like a playful like little Easter egg. It's like, this is how big he used to be. Wait till you see how big he is in this game.
That's kind of cool. It seems like, oh, this is Kraid? Oh, we're fighting this boss again. Okay. Oh, never mind.
Yeah, pretty much.
I thought Crocomire, the boss fight was pretty cool because it's the fact that you have to like, just hit him until he like falls backward into the acid. And then his death cinematic was pretty dope. Like, yeah. He just gets like his skin melted off by the acid, and he comes up as a skeleton on the other side.
Yeah, the goriest death on the SNES.
Yeah.
Yeah, I swear. I was surprised at the level of violence sometimes in that. I was shocked. I'm like, whoa, wait, this is made by Nintendo?
Yeah,
like,
yeah, I know.
Okay, yeesh. I'm like, damn, that's freaking sweet.
I wonder if there was any kids who were playing this back in the 90s and like their parents walked in during that scene. It's like, you're not playing this. Like, that's probably about as violent as video games got back then, so...
Yeah, honestly, I kind of was.
Yeah.
I could imagine that happening, yeah. Until Doom came around and, caused nationwide
What year
panic.
What year did Super Metroid
94.
release?
Doom was 2 years after
What
then.
else came out in 94? Yeah, I knew that Doom came out a little later. But I think you already had Wolfenstein 3D that already came out. No? Doom was already out. Doom 2 came out in 94.
Oh, whoa, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, Doom is the first one, I thought.
Yeah, I thought
Doom came out in 93. Came out just a year before.
Huh. So I guess the levels of violence were already increasing.
Yeah. 94 also had the original System Shock, which was a bit of a freaky kind of violent game for its time. It has aged like milk, but interesting game nonetheless.
Yeah.
Was System Shock done by the same studio as BioShock?
Eventually, yeah. I mean, it's the same people. It was made by Looking Glass, which Looking Glass Studios, I think that was like kind of like shut down or whatever, and the people of that studio, and especially like the figureheads like Ken Levine left to make Irrational Games afterwards.
And then they just basically did Baby's first immersive sim.
Yeah, because there were other key members that didn't come with Ken Levine to Irrational, like the name of the developer.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I love BioShock, but yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I do too. It's a good game.
Yeah, Metroid
compared
Prime
to like
4
Prey, for
is
example.
supposed. Yeah. Yeah, Metroid Prime 4 is supposed to come out for the Switch in the next couple years. It got delayed. I don't know if you guys know about that.
Ooh.
Yeah, I've heard.
Yeah, it was actually announced around the same time as Mario Odyssey. Like, I think in like the same like E3 trailer, whatever you call it. Their press conference. I think it was announced at the same time. Anyways, a couple years later, they actually came out and said, we are not happy with like how this game is progressing, so we're basically like starting over from scratch with the original developers. Which I appreciate that they're willing to like start over rather than just putting out an inferior product, but it's a little disappointing. So we might get that eventually.
It always is. I mean, it would suck if I heard news that, you know, Hideo Kojima was close to, you know, finishing up like a follow-up to Death Stranding or something like that, but it's like, oh no, we had to like restart development. I use Death Stranding because it's like the only real franchise currently running at the moment, I guess, that I kind of like. Resident Evil just got its new one, so, you know, I can't really use that as an example. Anyway, yeah, I mean, it would be disappointing, but, you know, I'd rather have the best possible product than I very much could get. I'd rather, you know, take a quality product later than something rushed from the beginning.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if they were...
That's what those of us in the Hollow Knight fandom are experiencing right now.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if they were trying to go a more modern route with Metroid Prime 4, like trying to make it more like an immersive sim or something, and it just wasn't jiving with like games that they've made before. So they're like, let's just go back to the basics, maybe. So, or maybe it's the other way around. It's like, this is too samey. Like, let's try and like do something unique and interesting. I'm very curious.
Yeah, it should be interesting.
Oh.
Yeah. Back to Super Metroid, I'm kind of curious, like, what's your guys' favorite boss so far?
Oh,
I would have to say Kraid, honestly.
You know, it's hard for me to say right now because I finished the game a decent while ago, and I've played a lot of other stuff in the meantime. I finished it back on April 18th. Oh my god, it's almost been a whole month. Favorite boss. Kraid was great. I was really frustrated with that one boss that, I can't remember his name, but you're in the tunnel and you have to, like, shoot him in the eye and whatever. Grogmire, I hated him at first, but after I figured out what I was doing, I was like, oh, this is a pretty cool fight, so... I guess I'd say him. I'd honestly say most of the boss fights were basically that, where I'm, like, pissed off for
a little bit.
A couple minutes, where I was like, what am I doing? And then finally I figure it out, and then I'm like, oh! then it's like, okay, this is really cool.
Yeah.
That was my experience, I guess, I to say overall of Super Metroid. Which is, you know, how I felt about, you know, Hollow Knight as well, where it's like, where am I going? What the hell am I doing? I keep getting my ass kicked right here. What's going on? And then I dropped my phone again. Anyway, it finally, like, clicks into my brain that, like, oh, this is what I need to do. And it's like, suddenly, I just breeze right through it. And then it's, like, liberating. And it's like, oh yeah, this is great. I guess that's just how I play Metroidvanias, and I don't know, that gameplay loop just I don't know, keeps the endorphins going.
Yeah, very strong gameplay loop.
Yeah, for sure.
And, yeah. If you guys want to play other Metroid games, I'd highly recommend Metroid Zero Mission next, which is the remake of the very first game, and one of the best remakes ever. It adds a lot of stuff. And a lot of stuff that's very interesting. It's the game that originates Zero Suit Samus from Super Smash Brothers. If you're interested in that, it's
interesting.
It's a lot of the same thing, but it's like it's more refined, really. Like the wall jumping is quite a bit easier. There's no mechanics to my memory that felt like underutilized, or they didn't get the proper time to be developed. You know, it's a Game Boy Advance game, so it still has that pixelated art style. So you'll feel like right at home playing it. Like, it even takes place in the same like world, really. So, yeah, Super Metroid. Actually, a fun fact about it is that it's almost kind of like a remake, almost, of the first game. It takes place in the same world. It is a continuation of the story, so it is more of a sequel. But what's interesting about it is that you see a lot of the same sort of areas, but it's remixed slightly. So it feels sort of familiar yet hostile at the same time. It's like, I've been here before, but it's different. So it's sort of like that feeling of like you like come home like from a vacation that you've been on for a week or something, and it's like something doesn't feel right. Like, this doesn't feel like home, and then you check all your belongings to make sure you didn't get stolen from while you were gone. It's that kind of feeling, but like in video game form. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know just how much I really have to add to the conversation, because Andrew's just kind of like talking about the things and kind of explaining it, that I'm like, yeah, like pretty much.
Yeah,
but like, yeah, no, it's like, but it's like aged a little bit. No, it's fine. I do the exact same thing when I talk about games that I like, so don't sweat it at all. I prefer to listen to you talk than listening to me talk.
Yeah, going up at this, to go into the to ask of your opinion of something, Ethan. The final level with the final boss, and there's sort of a story sequence with involving the baby Metroid that was kidnapped at the beginning of the game. I was wondering if you like understood what was happening there, or were you confused?
Oh, to be honest, I wasn't really sure what was going on. I'm just like, ooh, call to action, must do thing. Yeah, baby. Yeah, I wasn't quite sure, but I'm like, cool, it's a story thing, all right. I don't know what it is, but I'm already invested gameplay wise, so I'm, cool. I'll do what you want.
You want me to explain it to you?
Go ahead.
All right, here we go. Okay, so something that's really cool about the Metroid games is that they actually do have a continuing story from game to game, unlike other Nintendo franchises where it's basically the same plot every time. So the plot of the game is that the space pirates led by Mother Brain, who is the final boss, who, by the way, their character design at the end of the game is horrifying. It looks like a chicken with its like brain exposed. It's horrifying. And so the Mother Brain is leading the space pirates, and those are the bosses you fight, like Kraid and Ridley. Those are all parts of the space pirates, and they're trying to harness the power of the Metroids to overtake the universe. So anyways, in the first game, you kind of stop them, but some of like Mother Brain survives and she escapes, but the government that Samus works for decide that the Metroids are too dangerous to leave alive. So in the second game, they have her travel to the Metroid planet to basically like exterminate the whole race. It's kind of like, it's almost like morally gray. Like, you're taking like these like almost like sentient life forms and basically like eradicating them in the game. And towards the end of the game, you befriend a baby Metroid. Like, it just barely hatched, and it sees Samus, so it thinks that that Samus is its mother. And so for the last like little section of the game, the baby Metroid is kind of like your little companion. Like, it helps you fight enemies, and it helps you with the final bosses. Like you like kind of bond with it over the last stretch of the game. Anyways, the Metroid that gets kidnapped at the beginning of Super Metroid is that same baby Metroid. And the big Metroid at the very end of Super Metroid that rescues you, yeah, same thing. So like, it just basically escaped, and it's basically like the last Metroid. It's the last one. It's the last of its race. And while you're going around in the game, it was growing and feeding, and it became huge, and it like started to it became sort of like a parasite, and that's why it attacks you in the final level. However, like I said, the Metroids are kind of sentient, and this Metroid has attached itself as sort of like a mother-son dynamic between Samus, and that's why it spares you, and that's why it protects you. And so the fact that it gets killed by Mother Brain at the end, it's kind of like Samus's like child has died, and which is like super sad. It's almost like it's like probably the closest thing to like a tragedy in like a game from the 90s. And I gotta admit, like the first time I played this game, this is the first Metroid game I played, I didn't feel much emotional resonance from that. Like it's just pixels or whatever. But having played number 2 and having like had that like Metroid as like a companion for the last little bit of the game, like it actually like struck a chord with me, which I wasn't expecting. I was like, oh, like that. I made that sound. And yeah. And actually, in the game after this, Metroid Fusion, which is the 4th game, you sort of like, okay, so Samus gets infected with a virus, and she's dying. And the only way that the doctors are able to heal her is by implanting her with Metroid DNA, and the only ones that's left is what's left of the baby Metroid. So Samus is basically like cured from like the DNA of that Metroid. So it's kind of like her child has died, and it's like, and from the grave it has kind of like given her a new life. And so like in that game she has like Metroid powers. That game is like super scary. That's like borderline like a horror game, and like Samus is essentially like a zombie, and who's just basically like living through the baby Metroid. It's kind of fucked up, but I found it interesting.
That does sound pretty cool, though.
I basically spoiled it, but it's still there are games that aren't like ruined by spoiling at all. It's very much the gameplay loop that you play them for. So yeah, you got if you guys want to play the other games, there's Metroid Zero Mission, the remake of the first game, Metroid Samus Returns, which is where that all like exterminating the Metroids things happen. That's a remake on the 3DS. And then there's Metroid Fusion, which is the game after Super Metroid, which is on the Game Boy Advance. And yeah, that's kind of like the whole like Metroid quadrilogy story. This game's great. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I'll definitely do more exploring in the Metroid. Ah, man, I am always so freaking tired. My work drains me so much. I'm just so tired all the time.
That's adulting.
And it's my weekend. Yeah, I know it sucks, but hey, I feel fulfilled at my work and I make great money, so
that's great.
Anyway, yeah, I want to give more Metroid games a go. I've very much been hooked by this one and intrigued to see what else the series may offer. And so much so that I even want to... I've been intending at some point, but definitely want to get the Prime games going soon as well. I want to explore more Metroid, whichever version it may be. So... yeah, and then even just more Metroidvanias as a whole. So,
yeah.
Again, my experience is very minimal. This is the second 2D Metroidvania that I finished. I've only finished like 2 3D ones anyway, so, still very virgining in this genre, but hyped as shit to just play more.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Really happy to hear that. Yeah, and I hope you get to play more of it, Ben. I'd like to hear your thoughts on like the final part as well. It's kind of freaky.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, awesome. What would you give it out of 10?
Solid 8.
Ethan. Oh, I got cucked.
All right.
All right. I got cucked on audio. Caught in 4K. I'd give it an 8 out of 10 as well.
Yeah.
I think it's damn good, baby.
Yeah, having played the other Metroid games, like I used to give this game like a 9 or a 10, but the other games honestly like refined this even more because they came afterwards. So yeah, honestly, I don't even know.
They just get better.
I don't even know if this is my favorite Metroid game. Like, it's really tough because like with Metroid Fusion, like that game has like a ridiculous amount of like super epic boss fights, and it is like honestly like borderline a horror game. So it's like super interesting in that regard. However, the upgrades are a bitch in that game. Like you are going to be super underleveled for that game. So yeah.
Oof. Get my ass kicked by another game. I'm playing Demon Souls in a survival horror game right now. Like, ugh. Like I'm already getting my ass kicked all the time.
Metroid Samus Returns, the second one, is like it gets like its end game is insane. The boss fights are insane, and that's probably my favorite end game. The final boss is probably my favorite, and the first game.
Some of these are 3DS, right?
Yeah, that's a 3DS game. I can lend you my copy if you want it.
Yeah, I might want to even just buy it while 3DS games are still pretty cheap right now.
Yeah, go for it, man. Yeah, just play all of them. Play all of them, you bastards. Yeah, this franchise must be supported so that Nintendo doesn't stop making them.
It is most definitely my mission to do so, though I'm currently working through franchises I've been meaning to get to for years at this point. So I will get to them when I can, but I have every single intention of playing them.
Awesome. Well, happy to hear it.
Yeah, badass. So that then concludes the discussion on Super Metroid, which leaves us to the end of the show. There's a new recommendation on the block, and it's my turn. So I'm recommending something that is gonna be interesting, I think. And so I had to make sure I brought on a very interesting person with us to talk with about the game. Next episode, we will be discussing the 2004 video game, the vile, repugnant, stupid, funny, maybe kind of racist, maybe kind of based, maybe very self-aware through all of it, Postal 2. Not Portal 2, no, Postal 2, the first-person shooter game made by Running with Scissors. It is exclusive on PC. It will run on a toaster. It is pretty old, and it's still supported in a lot of ways by its development team. Running with Scissors still support the game. In fact, you know, even if I gave everybody Steam codes for the game, but even just that vanilla code that I gave you isn't even vanilla Postal 2 anymore. Postal 2 used to be just playing through Monday through Friday and so forth, but they added extra stuff on. I'm just going to be recommending the base game Monday to Friday. So you can play Apocalypse Weekend if you want to. I'd recommend it. It's still really good. It's a great continuation for the game. But if you just play up to Friday, totally cool with that. That's just what I'm going to be doing for this playthrough. And no, I'm not going to play Paradise Lost, the expansion, either. So, but we'll have a guest on as well. We will have Edgar back to talk about Postal 2. He's put a decent amount of time into the game before, and I think he will be a very fun person to talk about with this game, especially politically speaking, because there's a lot of political stuff in here, but Andrew will certainly appreciate the sandbox of dumb shit that you can do. So, and I think we'll all enjoy that very much, because you can go ape shit in this game, boy. You can go postal. And we'll very much like to see you back for that episode. That's going to be a fun one. So that concludes Usually Disappointed this time. Sad to see you all go. Oh no, Andrew, tell me where people can get more of your goodness. That didn't come across very well.
Check out my OnlyFan.
Oh, hey! Oh, get it?
And then check out my Rule 34 profile.
Epic.
Okay, those are my plugs.
There's the episode title. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Super OnlyFans.
Anyway.
Oh, yeah, okay. Find me at artstation.com/Andrew Langston. Or if you want to commission me, you can send me an email at andrewlangstonart@gmail.com.
Ben!
You can find me. I have a link tree in the description. You can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd and Backlogged at Thunderfellow. I don't really post much on Letterboxd anymore because I haven't been watching a lot of movies. Every once in a while, I'll post on Backlogged. And Twitter, all I do is shitpost. So, yeah.
Sick. You can find me on a multitude of different social media platforms, including Backlogged, Letterboxd, Medium, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm trying to remember all of them. You can also catch me on Twitch if I ever decide to Twitch stream. I haven't done it in a while. I might do it. I usually jump on my friend Daniel's streams, which is someone I'd like to have on our show sometime soon. But anyway, otherwise I write sometimes for CBR. Everything is in a link tree in the description as well, so you can find that there. Also, I put my game collection on there, so you can watch my game stonks if you're interested, and if you ever want to buy anything off of me, because I don't know if I'll intend on keeping this stuff forever. So I'm an open market too, if you're interested. Anyway, that does it for me.
Capitalist.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not like I ain't buying. Here's the thing. I'm not buying this stuff to sell it or anything. Like, I want to sit on it, but I mean, you know, it's all plastic tat at the end of the day. You know, it's not a permanent thing. So I mean, I'll have to part with it at some point or another. It's just a matter of when. So again, it's not planning on it anytime soon, but maybe one day. So anyway, that does it for me. Bye.
Why?
Bye.